In Scarface 1920, Al Capone, Stephanie St. Clair, Dean O'Bannon, and Arnold Rothstein fought for control of Chicago during the height of Prohibition. Well, it's now been 3 years. There's now some bloody business on the streets because new gangs want in on the action. They're seeking to put their hands and get a piece of the pie. It's time for more action, more business, more Scarface 1920, more bloody business. It's time to talk about some of the new gangs being added to the game. In this video, we're going to look at Charlie Gong and the Red Dragon Tong and all the mechanics and the changes they bring to the game of Scarface 1920. Hey everybody, welcome out to the show, Board Game Reviews. This is a YouTube channel dedicated to our wonderful tabletop gaming hobby, and this video is part of a video series looking at Bloody Business. Now, Bloody Business is an expansion for the game of Scarface 1920, a 1 to 4 player area control and deck building game with a little bit of bite. In this video, I'm going to cover the game that comes with a brand new expansion of Bloody Business. There's actually 2 new gangs that come with it. In the prior video, I covered the Golden Oaks. In this video, we're going to cover the Red Dragon Tong and all the interesting mechanics they bring to the game. Now, if you want to actually learn how to play the actual expansion for Bloody Business that covers all the new things such as the candidates, the G-Men, the new street gangs, and all these extra mechanics, I actually have a video where I'm going to cover the actual mechanics for the Bloody Business expansion itself. In this video, we're just going to look at the Red Dragon Tong, all the changes, all the modifications, and the unique twists and turns that they bring to the game of Scarface 1920. Now, the very first thing we need to do whenever we're having a player play with a game with the Scarface 1920 and they're playing this specific gang, the first thing we need to understand is that there's going to be a couple different modifications for the setup. Kind of like the Golden Oaks, the Red Dragon Tong is going to do a little bit of modifications to the board when we're setting up the board. The very first thing we need to do is whatever neighborhood happens to be on the south side, we are simply going to remove it from the game. Doesn't matter what the neighborhood is, we're just simply going to remove it from the game, and we're going to go ahead and replace it with this neighborhood tile right here. Once we place the new Chinatown neighborhood right there, whatever business happened to be on the neighborhood that we just removed from the game is simply going to be placed on top of this neighborhood right here. Now, this neighborhood and this district is specific to the Red Dragon Tong only. They're the only ones who can start here when we're playing them with them in the game, much like the Golden Oaks who can only start on the north side. The Red Dragon Tong can only start in the south side. So you might as well ignore the part of the rules that says that we're going to set up in reverse player order, because the very first thing that the Red Dragon Tong player is going to do, and I'm just going to call him the Red Dragon for the rest of the video because that's so hard to say, Charlie Gong and the Red Dragon Tong, it's going to make me tongue twist at least once, and it's going to get funny if I keep trying to say it. So for the Red Dragon player, we're simply going to take the south side, put in Chinatown, keep that business on top. And the next thing we're going to do is put our control marker on that section of the board. Again, the control marker is something that comes with the expansion. If you want to learn about that, check out the other video in the video series. And then we're going to put one of our control markers on the neighborhood. We're going to put our angry boss in that specific district. And again, we're going to put either a car or a truck in that specific district, signifying that we have control of the neighborhood. Then the rest of the players in reverse player order can go ahead and pick the remaining districts as normal, unless there's a Golden Oaks player. If there's a Golden Oaks player, they're actually going to take this district, and that's going to also minimize the available districts to the other players, because we still have to follow the basic rules of no starting in a district where another player is, and also no starting in a district that happens to have a police officer in it. Now, the Red Dragon, just like most gangs, is going to start off with $10, and we're going to start off with 3 jobs, just like most gangs in the game. That's no different. There's no other changes about the other things. We get our very basic player board that we're going to get for our gang also. It's going to come with our basic boss, our basic skills, our base leveling track, and the abilities that are going to be associated with our specific boss card. Just like the standard gangs, but you're going to notice a very interesting thing about this gang. We have what's called the Opium supply. This gang does not get access to nightclubs. They can never build nightclubs. And we'll cover all that in just a moment, along with a very interesting mechanic of they don't get right-hand man the standard way like the rest of the games do. The rest of the gangs get right-hand man by leveling up their boss on the boss track. Charlie has to work a different way to go ahead and bring his right-hand men into his gang to help spread his influence across all of Chicago. The next thing that the Red Dragon gang needs to get is make sure that they get the 2 starting deals that they get for them. Unlike standard gangs, we're not going to get a gun supplier and an alcohol supplier. We're going to get 1 gun supplier and 1 opium dealer. The opium dealer is going to start with 1 opium on it among the 21 that we have available to our gang. And then we're also going to start with 1 gun on top of our gun supplier. We don't get the option of choosing a gun or an alcohol barrel. It's mandatory that we take the gun and that we take the 1 opium for our opium dealer. Once we place those, we're going to simply place those next to our game board like normal, and then make sure we put all the other 20 pieces of opium off to the side next to our game board. The next thing that we need to do as a Red Dragon player is we need to take the 7 Red Dragon cards that are going to be associated with the abilities that we have. These cards are going to be numbered from 1 all the way down to 7 for the final card, and we're going to put these cards in reverse order. 7 is going to be on the bottom, counting all the way up to 2, from 7 all the way up to 2, and then the final card, the number 1 card, is going to be face up. The other cards in numerical order are going to be placed face down. It's going to be very important because these cards are going to be part of the mechanics for the Red Dragon player. And not only that, every even card, when we get these even cards into play, are when we're going to get our right-hand man. The 2, the 4, and the 6 is when we get these cards into play, is how we gain those extra right-hand man cards into our actual hand of cards, not going by the standard leveling up of your boss along the boss track. Basically, the Red Dragon player has 4 different items that kind of tie together to create the mechanics for the Red Dragon player. The very first one are going to be the Red Dragon cards. Now, there's 7 cards in the Red Dragon deck, and of course, 1 always starts the game face up. And during your turn, if you ever have any of these cards face up, you can use them during your turn, during your action turn, for any of the powers and the abilities they give them to you. Once you use a card, you're simply going to place it face down. Once the card is face down, you're not going to get it back until you go to your reorganization phase. During your reorganization phase, you're going to turn up a certain amount of cards face up based on the total amount of opium den that you currently have on the board. So at the start of the game, you have 0 opium dens. So if you don't manage to get another one out there during the reorganization phase, you're not going to gain any of these cards back. But if you happen to get 1 opium den out there, you're going to get 1 card back during your reorganization phase. If you get a 2nd opium den out there, during your reorganization phase, you're going to gain a 2nd card. And once you have that card, you now have access to gaining one of your first right-hand men. Once you get the 3rd opium den, the 4th opium den, the 5th opium den, the 6th, and then finally the 7th one, then you're going to gain access to all 7 of these cards. And again, all these are going to refresh during your reorganization phase. And on your turn, you can take any one of these cards, simply turn it face down, gain the benefits of the cards, and you're good to go, and you still have access to all these other cards. So that's the very first really cool mechanic about the Red Dragons. They have these nice abilities that they can use at any single time that they want. The next major mechanic they have are going to be the opium tokens themselves. Now, every single den can hold up to 3 opium on them at any single time, and during our turn, we can go ahead and use these opium. These opium can be used with some of these Red Dragon cards, but they can also be used various different ways. Now we ask, how do we get all these opium dens out there? Well, this is the extra really cool mechanic about the game and how everything ties together for the Red Dragon player. Because the Red Dragon player has 2 very unique abilities on the lieutenants, which are unique to them and not available to anybody else. Their lieutenants have the basic ability of retrieving 1 thug from any district or deal, or spending as an additional different option. What we can do is we spend $5 and place an opium den in any district adjacent to another opium den district that exists out there. So once I get my very first district out there, my very first opium den, I'm good. If I play a lieutenant card, then I can put out an opium den here, or I can put it out over here as long as I spend the $5. And again, I am saying or. I can't pick all 3 of these, but I can go adjacent to any one I picked before. So for example, if I pay the $5 and I put my opium den there, then if I play another lieutenant card, again, if I spend the $5, I can simply put an opium den over here. That's how I'm going to spread out all these opium dens across the board as a Red Dragon player. Again, coinciding with the ability of having the opium, the ability that I'm going to get with all these extra cards, and then the next very, very cool thing that shows how all of this ties together. Every time the Red Dragon player decides to send one of their thugs to go over here to the opium dealer to get a deal out of them, they're going to get a certain amount of opium. Now, at the basic level, you're only going to get 2 opium. As you level up your skill level for Charlie himself, you're going to gain a bonus to your opium, either +1 or +2, or if you happen to have no skill at all, obviously +0. But the very basic level, you're going to gain 2 opium, or possibly up to 4 opium, every time you go ahead and send one of your thugs to the opium dealer. This opium is going to be allowed to be placed out there on your various opium dens that you have out on the board. Now, every opium den can only have a max amount of 3 opium. So if I send somebody to the opium den dealer and I don't have any places to place the opium, it's basically going to be wasted. So make sure you're putting out your opium dens to go ahead and make up the difference here. So this example, I showed you a +2 my opium creation. I send 1 thug over here to gain the 2 basic, plus the extra 2 for level Charlie. I would gain a total of 4 opium. Since I only have 2 dens out there and this one's full, the only place I can do is put these 3 over here on this den just like this. And then this last opium will be wasted. It's going to go back into my supply. I can't put it out there unless I had other opium dens across the board to go ahead and spend that opium. Additionally, what is another interesting thing about this game is, like I said earlier, Charlie doesn't gain right-hand man by leveling up his skill along his skill track. Every time he gets to the spaces that normally would give a player a right-hand man, instead he's going to get various amounts of opium. So again, just like normal, you have to have openings on the board to place that opium. So if I was a player playing not so well at this point, and I have the current status of the board looking out here like this, and I make the foolish mistake of leveling up into the spot just like this, I'm going to lose out on that opium. So make sure when you're building up Charlie and you're gaining those opium dens, you're playing smart and making sure you're leaving yourself room to go ahead and gain that opium, because this opium is the main cool mechanic of how the Red Dragon Tong truly works. As I'm playing out my lieutenants, which is going to allow me to add opium dens out there on the board, every time I add an opium den to the board, I'm going to flip over the next card in sequential order. So let's just say in this example, I had 3 cards face up because I managed to get those opium dens out there. And again, don't forget, once you reveal the card for the first time, you're going to gain that right-hand man added immediately into your deck. So I have these 3 cards out here and I have not spent them at all. And I decide to play that lieutenant, spend the $5, and I decide in an opium den out there. Now I'm immediately going to gain access to that level 4 card, and it's also going to give me my right-hand man. But how this is really interesting is because a lot of these cards have costs on them where I'm going to spend my opium to use these abilities. And these abilities can start off not super duper strong. The level 1 ability isn't that great. I mean, it's decent, but basically what it says is take 1 opium from any opium den and place it on a neighborhood next to them. These neighborhoods gain +2 defense for each opium on them. So if I use that card, I can simply do this, and now the defense of this neighborhood is up to 5. Not a great card, not a bad card, but it works pretty darn decently. It says during your reorganization phase, spend all opium not stored in your opium dens, and then we can go ahead and spend those opium, and that's the other cool mechanic that we have here. So we're going to go ahead and use all these cards. Again, when we use them, we're going to flip them over, but we can choose when we use them, how we use them, and that's going to allow us to spend all the opium for various different abilities, going all the way up to the final level 7 ability, which helps us build all of our mechanics in this really cool way on how the Red Dragon Tong works. Hope you enjoyed this video explaining how the Red Dragon Tong adds new interesting mechanics to the game itself. The Red Dragon are a very interesting game because the big thing is the opium building and all these special cards and how we get these cards, how quickly we get them, and when we want to use them. This is basically kind of the way I like to describe the Red Dragon Tong is they are the one gang that is really focusing on the authorities and kind of sitting back secretly, working seedily behind the scenes, planning their moment where they're going to take their very big action, where they're going to do something great and fabulous to jump ahead of all the other players. It's a very interesting, if you ever played a game such as Root, if you ever played Root, you know what I'm going to talk about here in the game of Root. In the game of Root, you want to be looking like the player who isn't winning, then suddenly do the really cool move to go ahead and start winning the game. That's how this faction plays. And if you like that gameplay, that's a style of gameplay you really enjoy, this is a faction you're going to enjoy quite a bit. Now, if you have any comments or questions, make sure you leave them down in the YouTube comments down below. I'll do my best to answer those questions as quickly as I can. And also feel free to email me off-the-shelf board game reviews. That is otsbgr@gmail.com. I do my best to answer those emails as quick as I can. If you enjoy the content and enjoy the videos I put out there, think about supporting the channel on Patreon. Just $1 in the tip jar is a great way to say thanks. This channel is 100% sponsor free. I'm not paid for the content I put out there. I'm a fan of the hobby just like you. I enjoy doing this video content to help you enjoy the hobby as much as I do. Toss $1 in the tip jar is a great way to say thanks, but you don't have to do that. 2 seconds of your time and 2 mouse clicks is a great way to help the channel keep growing strong. Click that like button, click that subscribe button. It tells YouTube analytics that this is a great channel that other people should be watching. And as always, check out the other videos in the series covering everything about Bloody Business, the gangs, how they work, and also sample gameplay, and where I'm going to show you just how these 2 gangs play against each other. As always, thanks for watching.